When football went silent, what empty stadiums revealed about data, pressure, and performance, Pedro Eloy and Chinchin Ma focus on the topic of sports data and broadcast technology and analyze the pandemic period where football experienced something unprecedented. Matches continued being played in stadiums, but the voices that had shaped the game for generations disappeared. Without supporters in the stands, football revealed new insights into the relationship between people, performance, and decision-making. In this episode, you'll gain insights into how analysts experienced a version of football where hidden conversations, tactical instructions, and player interactions became visible. You'll also hear why supporters are more than spectators and how emotion, pressure, and energy influence performance on the pitch. Plus, a look at whether removing external pressure changed the psychological environment behind one of Portugal's most discussed championship victories. And we'll also cover how expectations can motivate athletes, but also affect decision-making in high-stakes moments. And finally, how the absence of stadium noise transformed communication, tactical coordination, and the way football could be observed. Business Masters series examines how organizations build, sustain, and renew competitive advantage by exploring leadership decisions, operating models, innovation strategies, and critical inflection points.
Welcome to another episode of Business Masters, Behind the Decisions That Shape Successful Companies, a program produced by Pedro Eloy and Chinchin Ma. The series features conversations with CEOs, founders, corporate leaders, innovators, and industry experts who have shaped successful organizations through strategic decision-making and disciplined execution. Each conversation is paired with industry, market, and business model analysis, providing practical perspectives on the strategic and managerial choices that drive long-term performance across sectors, including technology, manufacturing, textiles, and sports. So, I want you to imagine a professional athlete for a second. They are stepping up to take this crucial penalty kick in the final minutes of just a massive championship match.
Oh, the pressure is unimaginable.
Right. And there are 60,000 fans surrounding them. The noise is absolutely deafening. And, conventional wisdom tells us that this roaring home crowd gives the athlete this incredible advantage.
Yeah, give them the energy they need. That is what we were taught, right?
Exactly. But, what if that is completely wrong? What if those screaming fans are actually the exact reason that highly trained professional is about to miss?
It is a crazy thought, but the pandemic forced us into this global social experiment that finally gave us the data to answer that. And what we learned completely rewrites how we understand pressure.
And not just on a football pitch either. We are talking about boardrooms, startups, our everyday working lives. So to unpack this, we need to talk about how stadiums actually became silent in the first place.
Right, going back to March 2020.
Yeah, the whole world just halts. And professional football enters this almost surreal reality. I mean, these massive architectural structures were engineered to capture human emotion.
And suddenly they were just eerily silent.
Yeah.
It was a jarring sensory shift,
Totally. The rhythmic chants disappeared. The thousands of voices surrounding every pass just vanish.
Replaced by just seas of empty plastic seats. And when football returned after those initial shutdowns, the cameras were on, the matches continued. But you, the supporters, were missing.
And for the professionals working inside the game, specifically people like Felipe Gomes and the Benfica lab analysis team, this changed everything. They still had to attend these matches to track data.
Right, their operational role was the same.
Yeah, but the environment was unrecognizable. Imagine standing in a massive stadium that normally carries the intensity of tens of thousands of fans, and it feels like a weekend park match.
The scale of that is just so important to grasp. From up in the stands, Felipe and his colleagues experienced a version of football that is usually hidden completely beneath the noise.
It became almost clinical, right?
Exactly. The stadium effectively became this acoustic chamber. You could suddenly hear coaches' instructions traveling with crystal clarity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, players communicated without shouting. The shifting defensive organizations, those split-second moments of leadership, they all became entirely audible.
And it wasn't just a fun novelty to hear the players swearing. Research from that period, like the studies by Link and Answer or Wunderlich, proved that removing those supporters changed the actual match dynamics.
The fundamental conditions of the competition shifted.
Right. Without a roaring crowd screaming for a foul, referees actually awarded significantly fewer fouls and yellow cards against the away teams. The unconscious bias from the noise evaporated.
That is fascinating.
Which raises this really provocative question for you in your own field. If you strip away all the external noise in any industry, does it reveal the true operational efficiency underneath?
That is a brilliant question. And you can see that exact dynamic in the business world, specifically the shift to remote work between 2020 and 2022.
Oh, absolutely.
Just like those empty stadiums revealed the raw tactical communication of a team, the disappearance of physical office noise forced businesses to confront their actual mechanics.
Because the office functioned kind of like a stadium crowd, right?
Exactly. Think about the open-plan corporate office in 2019. It had the constant hum of conversation, the performative aspect of looking busy at your desk.
Managing by walking around and just feeling the vibe.
Yes. But when everyone went home to a screen, that ambient noise vanished. Leadership had to look at what was actually happening beneath the surface.
Because sitting at your desk typing loudly is just the corporate equivalent of a player running around aimlessly just to get the crowd to cheer.
Spot on. It looks great, but is it structurally effective? The shift to remote work revealed exactly where communication was succeeding or failing.
You had to look at the actual deliverables, the code written, the sales closed.
Right. If your workflow was broken in 2019, the office noise hit it. In 2020, the silence made it undeniably obvious, which really brings us to hearing the game beneath the noise.
Because the silence revealed the data, but it also revealed the human element. Felipe was careful not to make sweeping statistical claims himself, but he noticed massive differences in the sensory experience.
His team handled the raw data sets, sure, but what Felipe could describe with absolute authority was how fundamentally different the emotional environment felt.
And what did that stripped bare environment look like?
Well, he saw that fans aren't just passive spectators. They actively shape the environment. Supporters can organically create momentum and push teams to take bold risks.
They literally push tired players forward.
Yes, a packed stadium extends beyond just tactical prep. It is an emotional force.
And there's actual biology behind that. When 70,000 people are screaming, it triggers an autonomic nervous system response.
Massive spikes in adrenaline, right?
Exactly, adrenaline and cortisol. Blood vessels dilate, heart rate increases. The athlete is physically capable of sprinting faster in the 89th minute than their baseline data suggests.
The crowd is altering their biological limits in real time, which explains why matches without supporters felt noticeably calmer.
The urgency was just gone.
Completely. Players were competing in a much quieter, almost calculated psychological environment. Emotion is an undeniable part of performance.
And if you want to see that in business, just look at startup culture between 2016 and 2021. The momentum from venture capital hype acted exactly like a roaring stadium crowd.
Oh, that is such a perfect parallel.
You had founders operating with massive funding announcements, constant media adulation. That external hype pushed entrepreneurs to take incredibly reckless risks.
The whole growth over profitability era.
Right. They were scaling operations and burning cash because the crowd of VCs was cheering them on. They overrode foundational financial data with the adrenaline of hype.
But when that environment shifted, when capital dried up,
Things got very calculated. Everyone suddenly cared about customer acquisition cost and runway.
Yeah.
Without the roaring crowd, startup operations looked like those highly tactical football matches.
the reality of the balance sheet took over. Which means we really need to examine the crowd as a hidden influence, because they actively shaped decision-making.
We used to think they were just consumers of the product.
Exactly, just there for the spectacle. But the pandemic shattered that illusion. The crowd has a distinct dual nature. They provide energy for a tired player, sure.
But they also bring a heavy, heavy dark side.
Immense pressure. Expectations become heavy, especially for historic teams. A single poor pass triggers this visceral, immediate reaction from the stands.
So playing at home isn't always an advantage. If you're underperforming, playing in front of your home fans can actually be terrifying.
You are playing not to make a mistake in front of 50,000 angry people.
Mm-hmm.
And the COVID era removed both sides of this. The encouragement and the real-time judgment vanished.
And the data from Germany really backed this up, didn't it?
Yes, the Bundesliga data showed home advantage didn't just diminish, it sometimes reversed into a disadvantage. The crowd fundamentally influences the competitive conditions.
And this mirrors how modern businesses deal with real-time consumer feedback. From 2016 to 2022, social media acted as an immediate, unrelenting digital stadium crowd.
The digital stadium.
Yeah,
It has that exact same duality.
exactly. For brands, this digital crowd could fuel incredible viral energy. A clever marketing campaign could catch the wave and push a brand to new heights.
The algorithm acts like the stadium architecture, amplifying the noise.
But that same digital crowd can turn on a brand in an instant. They apply paralyzing pressure through immediate public backlash or cancel culture.
Just like a player freezing after hearing the groans of the fans. Corporate executives faced immense anxiety knowing every move was judged by this digital stadium.
We saw companies paralyzed by this. Brand managers were terrified to launch innovative products. They started playing not to lose, over-indexing on safety.
Because the visceral reaction was just too daunting. Which brings us to Sporting's empty stadium title. Did the pressure actually disappear for them?
Setting the stage here, Sporting CP won the league title in the 2020 to 2021 season, ending a brutal 19-year drought.
Right, and it wasn't about whether they deserved it. They were tactically sound. The debate was whether playing without fans removed a very specific toxic pressure.
A 19-year drought creates a suffocating emotional burden. A single missed chance would normally amplify the anxious, frustrated reaction from the stands.
Imagine being a 21-year-old athlete. You misplace one pass early on, and 50,000 people groan with the weight of 19 years of failure.
The cognitive load of processing that while trying to execute physical tasks is just staggering. It's paralyzing.
But during the pandemic season, that immediate compounding reaction disappeared. Mistakes happened, but without thousands of voices reacting in real time.
The silence was a psychological shield.
Precisely. They competed without the immediate emotional feedback. It proved that pressure can sometimes become a literal barrier to performance.
You see this dynamic in corporate turnarounds all the time. Legacy companies struggling under public market shareholders face the exact same demanding fan base.
The real-time market reactions are brutal.
Yeah. A missed quarterly earnings projection sends the stock tumbling. That's why management often chooses to take struggling public companies private, like Dell in 2013 or various PE buyouts.
They are effectively emptying the stadium.
Exactly. They remove the short sellers and the public crowd. It allows them to restructure and execute long-term strategies without the panic of constant external judgment.
They can afford to make a bad pass without tanking their stock price. And to understand why removing that judgment works, we have to look at the psychology of pressure in elite sport.
Because elite athletes spend their lives training for these high-stakes moments. But pressure doesn't always produce better performance, does it?
No, the myth is that the grades always rise to the occasion. But research like the studies from Hill and his colleagues in 2010 tells a very different story about choking under pressure.
How does that actually work mechanically? Why does a pro suddenly fail?
It comes down to explicit monitoring. When you learn a skill, it moves to the automatic motor cortex. Your body just knows how to swing your foot.
But under immense pressure, the prefrontal cortex kicks back in.
Yes. You start consciously thinking about the mechanics of the action. You overanalyze the angle of your foot, and that conscious interference disrupts the fluid, automatic execution.
And football creates countless situations where this matters. A striker taking a penalty kick operates in this isolated moment where confidence and immense pressure intersect.
And the crowd drastically increases the cognitive load of those moments. The empty stadium period temporarily changed this balance by removing that immediate external judgment.
The cognitive load was lifted, and you see this mirrored in the massive SPAC boom of 2020 and 2021.
Oh, the special purpose acquisition companies. They went public to acquire private startups, thrusting them into the public markets incredibly fast.
Right, and brilliant startup founders who were amazing at building products in private suddenly choked under intense investor scrutiny.
They were thrust onto the public stage facing a stadium of Wall Street analysts.
Exactly. The explicit monitoring kicked in. They started managing to the stock price rather than their product roadmap, making poor strategic decisions based on optics.
They choked under the pressure of the public stadium. But looking back at Sporting CP, we can't just conclude that removing the crowd is a magic bullet.
Right, they still had to actually win the matches.
Exactly. Felipe Gomes firmly believes Sporting's success wasn't just because of empty stadiums. They had to perform, and they proved it by winning again later when fans returned.
The success was built on deep foundations, the squad quality, the coaching under Ruben Amorim, the tactical prep.
The pandemic lowered the psychological friction, but it didn't create the success out of thin air. You cannot replace tactical competence with a quiet stadium.
And this translates perfectly to the market corrections of 2022. During the tech boom, zero interest rate policies and cheap venture capital created an environment with no friction.
A rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, it hides fundamental flaws. But when the market corrected and the pressure returned, the companies relying purely on hype collapsed.
But companies with real operational quality and sound unit economics thrived.
Exactly. A unique environment might reduce friction, but underlying foundational quality dictates long-term survival. Which brings us to a different kind of football conversation entirely: communication.
This was fascinating. In a normal match, players operate inside a deafening wall of sound. Communication gets lost beneath the noise of the crowd.
It becomes a game of hand gestures.
But during the pandemic, that acoustic barrier was removed. From the stands, Felipe could hear conversations that normally remained hidden.
They could hear the real-time processing speed of the collective team, right?
Exactly. Defenders shifting blocks verbally, goalkeepers directing movements from behind the line. The small tactical adjustments became entirely audible.
Because football requires constant verbal coordination, expert teams depend on effective communication to build shared mental models.
Studies like Eccles and Tenenbaum in 2004 show that high-performing groups aren't just random, talented individuals. They establish common expectations through rapid information exchange.
The empty stadium made all of these intricate interactions visible. A coach could deliver highly specific information without screaming.
It allowed analysts to observe the underlying tactical structure because the emotional noise had disappeared. And this mirrors the boom of enterprise collaboration tools between 2020 and 2022.
Oh, like Slack, Microsoft Teams, and Zoom?
Exactly. By forcing everyone out of the physical office, we remove the physical noise of the traditional workplace. No more unrecorded hallway chats.
All corporate communication had to happen digitally, making it highly visible and analyzable.
Leaders could look at back-end analytics and see exactly how their teams coordinated. They could see who the real hubs of information were and where bottlenecks existed.
By removing the physical noise, the true tactical structure of corporate communication became undeniable.
Which brings us to our final thoughts. The pandemic demonstrated that a stadium is a complex, living environment created by the continuous interaction between players, coaches, and supporters.
Before COVID, it was almost impossible to isolate the crowd's specific influence.
But the empty stadiums created an unprecedented natural experiment. It allowed data analysts to map communication without acoustic interference.
And it reminded players that performance is shaped by far more than just physical ability. Human beings are deeply responsive to their environments.
The crowd is an inextricable part of the game. They don't score the goals, but they influence the psychological conditions. When they disappeared, football became a fundamentally different version of itself.
Before we close out, we want to share a note of appreciation for Felipe Gomes, club manager at Viva Gym Lisbon.
Yes, formerly of Benfica Football Club.
His time and expertise for interview articles, from 90 minutes to millions of data points, and teaching machines to understand football, provided incredible insight into the vital human expertise behind data-driven decision-making.
And if you want to explore the foundation of what we discussed today, here is our end credit reading list.
Awesome, let's hear it.
First, we referenced a paper by Eccles and Tenenbaum from 2004 titled, "Why an Expert Team is More Than a Team of Experts: A Social Cognitive Conceptualization of Team Coordination and Communication in Sport." If you've ever wondered how great teams seem to read each other's minds, this is the one to read. It breaks down how communication turns individuals into a cohesive unit.
That one was essential for understanding what those analysts were actually hearing.
Exactly. Next is a classic from Hill, Hampton, Matthews, and Fleming from 2010 called Choking in Sport, a review. This is a truly fascinating look into the neuroscience of failing under pressure. It explains explicit monitoring and why highly skilled people suddenly freeze.
It perfectly frames how expectations affect decision-making.
Then we have a 2022 study by Lincoln Answer, how the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the game of soccer. This piece provides the hard empirical data showing exactly how the pandemic changed the statistical realities of the sport.
That's where the numbers on referee bias came from, right?
Yes. We also looked at research from Telp and Thaler in 2020. COVID-19 has turned home advantage into home disadvantage in the German soccer Bundesliga. This research proved that the COVID era actually turned home field advantage into a statistical disadvantage, highlighting the psychological anxiety a demanding home crowd creates.
That data is just mind-blowing.
Finally, we recommend a 2021 study by Wunderlich, Weigelt, Rain, and Memmert. How does spectator presence affect football? Home advantage remains in European top-class football matches played without spectators during the COVID-19 pandemic. This gives a robust pan-European view of the true impact of the fans across different leagues.
Pedro Eloy is an international executive specializing in enterprise growth through business performance, revenue optimization, digital transformation, and strategic market expansion. With more than 25 years of leadership experience across Asia, Europe, and the Americas, Pedro has held executive and advisory roles in multinational organizations, including Li & Fung and AOL Turner, as well as high-growth ventures such as GH Software, acquired by IBM, and MiniV.TV, acquired by Videodome. In the public sector and academia, Pedro served as executive council member and chairman of the United Nations ESBN YET, leading business initiatives across 61 Asia-Pacific economies, contributed to ICC International Chambers of Commerce digital transformation, and taught as associate MBA professor in entrepreneurship at the University of Hong Kong.
We thank you for listening to this episode of Business Masters and trust this conversation provided valuable insights and perspectives that can help shape strategic thinking and decision-making within your organization. We look forward to welcoming you back for future episodes where we will continue sharing impactful analyses and hosting thought-provoking conversations that explore the ideas shaping the future of business, technology, and innovation.
If the crowd in your industry suddenly went completely silent tomorrow, no social media hype, no immediate market feedback, no external pressure, what structural truth about your own team's communication and performance would suddenly become visible?
Business Masters, Behind the Decisions That Shape Successful Companies, a program produced by Pedro Eloy and Chinchin Ma. Each conversation is paired with rigorous industry, market, and business model analysis, providing practical perspectives on the strategic and managerial choices that drive long-term performance across sectors, including technology, manufacturing, textiles, and sports.